Hello.
Good afternoon.
How are you, young lady?
I'm good.
I hear it's warm where you guys are,
It's nice. Yeah.
and you're not in your garden.
No, Tim was out there chopping things off today, but
Is it chop off time?
yeah, I was working on stuff.
Yeah. So Ed is joined. He's said hi in the chat box. So
Okay.
um, I need to get off at 3:30. So I'll be on until then, and I'll
Okay.
disappear into the sunset.
Hey, Joan. Hi, Fatty.
Hey, Ed, how are you?
Good night.
I'm well, thank you. Fatty, aren't you meeting out after MLTSS today?
An interesting meeting this morning, wasn't it?
Yes.
Interesting meeting. It's the advocates are getting vocal again.
Interesting. What did I miss?
There's always a place for good advocacy, Fatty.
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's good. For a while there, we had thought that people had lost their energy for this. So a lot of I want to say energetic conversation about service coordination and the plan reductions. But I got, just so you know, guys know, I just got a big sigh of relief from many of our providers in Philadelphia. Apparently, the Department of Health just extended the deadline for vaccination till fully vaccinated till November 22nd, which is a huge relief for providers because they were all concerned that in 10 days we're going to have to release as many as 4,500 caregivers in Philadelphia. So
Wow.
a big sigh of relief, a big sigh of relief. So. And Ed, just so you know, I know we'll bring it up again in a minute. We're waiting for some wonderful data from you folks on the IDD population in CHC. And I haven't copied you on that exchange, but we're getting positive feedback that they're gonna share some data with us.
Well, that's a good thing, Fatty.
Yeah.
Have you asked
meeting.
OLTL about data?
Yeah, we'll bring it up in a couple of minutes. We'll bring it. I just want to
Okay.
we'll get you in the loop on it. So
No problem.
Do we have a moderator today? Do we have anyone from our CPA?
Yeah, I'm here, Joan. It's Allison.
Okay, can you see if we've got some people on with us besides us chickens that have been talking here a little bit?
It looks
Hey,
like we just,
Allison.
yeah. Hi, Ed. Yeah, it looks like we just have Christy right now besides myself, Ed, Fatty, and you. We did have a few other people RSVP, so maybe we give them
Okay.
another minute or so.
Yeah, let's wait a couple minutes. Yeah.
It seemed like Zoom was taking a little bit of time until it was like connecting, to be truthful.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a hang up when I first
It
started.
just sometimes does that.
It gets tired with all these meetings.
Yeah. Yes.
And we do too.
Uh-huh. Joan, we did have somebody else just hop on. I did let Mary in as well. So I don't know if you want to get started, if you want to wait, and I'll keep an eye on anybody else making their way in.
Okay. Well, maybe it's going to be a small group today. So let's go ahead and get started because we are going to lose Patty halfway through. So, all right, folks. So thanks for tuning in today. Let me review who we have on the call. Allison, I'll start and then you can tell me who you've seen come in to join us. So it's myself, Joan Martin, Patty Sahar, Ed Butler. Ed, is Ryan with you today?
No, he's not. I think he has a conflict.
Okay. And Allison, who else do we have?
We have Christy, and I'm going to mispronounce your last name, so I'm not even going to try. Sorry, Christy. And then we have Mary as well.
Okay, and Mary, where's Mary from?
I can't see Mary. If you can unmute yourself, I'm not sure. Here, let me pull up real quick here. Sorry. Of course, I don't have the right. Oh, Voices for Independence.
Okay. Great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and perhaps some other folks will join us as we go. So one of the things we wanted to cover today is some follow-up items from previous conversations to bring the group current. And I wanted to note that you saw, you would have gotten a copy of both this agenda and the minutes from the prior meeting, which was the August meeting. We did not have a meeting in September. And you'll note that in those minutes, at the time, in early August, we all thought we would be having a hybrid conference where we could actually come to Hershey and see each other and be together. And we were speculating that there would be perhaps an appropriate time for this group to meet or discuss something in person. Obviously, that did not happen. Things changed. The conference went all virtual, which was last week. So we did miss that opportunity to do that and have dialogue with each other in person. So we hope we get another opportunity to do that at some point. So the first item on your agenda today is to go over the information request for intellectual disability and autism that for folks in the Community Health Choices program. The need for this information stems from observations that were made over the last several years as Community Health Choices has been implemented and folks become eligible and brought into the program, that the number of people served by Community Health Choices with either an intellectual disability or autism diagnosis seem to be growing and growing. And we, folks at ProVantaCare, and also in talking with colleagues at RCPA, we decided that it would be good to quantify that, to actually get some data, some statistics on what the actual numbers are. So Fatty began dialogue with OLTL to get that type of information. And I'm going to turn it over to him for the status of that request.
Right.
So
we started conversations actually right before the Labor Day holiday, where Abby Coleman, the director for data center information, all things data at DHS, was reached out to me and wanted to find out what we wanted the data for and why we were asking for it. Specifically requested that we don't go through the right to know process so that we do not create a tempest in a teapot, essentially, of data that would require multiple iterations. Abby Coleman assigned the project to Philip Stock on her team, who has started the collection or started the data assembly for us. So here's the background on it. We anecdotally, about 18 months ago, we had received information from OLTL that there were roughly 3,500 consumers who had with an intellectual or developmental disability who had been enrolled into CHC, and that those consumers were being enrolled in CHC because they either had been on an IDD ODP waiting list, or because, as many of you know, they may have a physical disability that would make them NFCE eligible. And so, and because CHC is an entitlement program, there is no, other than being NFCE and having the financial eligibility, we do not have a waiting list. These individuals were enrolled in CHC. We also have heard, again, anecdotally from many of the providers, particularly in the PAS world, that there is a number of consumers who have been enrolled in the program. So we approached OLTL and the MCOs with two propositions. One is, we'd like to know not who they are, where they are, and how many of them are currently enrolled in CHC. We asked for the data at a county level by MCO. And the reason for that is that this is just strategy on Joan and my part, that we thought if we went to the MCOs with specific numbers in specific counties where these consumers were enrolled, we would be able to engage them in a way that would specifically address employment services, which are currently in the CHC program, but also to engage the MCOs around other services that these individuals would need that are not currently part of the CHC program. So the MCOs all three of them are aware that we are waiting for the data, and they're, I don't say eager, but they're open to having conversations with us about it. And so particularly in the area of employment, where employment services are already part of our waiver, we feel that if there would be a much more pointed approach to dealing with the MCOs on this topic, and to help increase the deployment of enrollment services in these areas. And so we're waiting for the data as of September 23rd, which is just 2 weeks ago. Philip Stock confirmed that he is in the process of making the data request. Fatty, being fully impatient, as he usually is, has reached out just to remind folks that we're really eager to get it. I feel confident that we'll get the data. I just feel that it's taken longer than I'd like it to. So that's where we are. And we think this would be a really interesting linchpin for us to be able to help move forward the deployment of employment services, but also to try to identify what additional services may be needed for these consumers. One last point, if I may, and that's today, as many of you know, the largest individual service being provided is personal assistance services in CHC. Over 100,000 consumers are receiving that service. There is no specific population health group that has been identified within CHC other than the brain injury population, and that is less than 2,000 people. So we believe that this will be a significant enough population health group to warrant both the department and the MCOs looking at how we can best address these consumers' needs. So it's a combination of self-serving, wanting to get more business for you guys as providers, but also a strong advocacy agenda that says these are consumers that do need and deserve to get services that they require to live independently in the community. So, Joan, turning it back over to you, and I'll answer questions.
Okay. I share Fatty's impatience. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that data and see what we make of it, see what it tells us. And since we did ask for a great deal of information, which hopefully will reap a number of people that we can see the extent to which people with intellectual disability or autism are actually being served in community health choices. And especially since we've asked for people who have either primary or secondary ICD-10 codes, that we would get people who have another health issue that may have been the one that got them into community health choices and met the nursing facility level of care. However, they also have an intellectual disability or autism. So among the list of the ICD-10 codes we did ask for, we didn't just ask for the intellectual disability, the ones you're all familiar with, the ones that go from mild to profound, and then other and unspecified. So we did ask for those. But then there are lots and lots of ICD-10 codes that are part of, related to intellectual disability, where it might be a syndrome that is highly associated with causing mental retardation or intellectual disability, but doesn't necessarily in and of itself. So I think we'll see that a lot of those folks are who's in CHC, that they have other syndromes. For example, Prader-Willi or Barth syndrome, fetal alcohol syndrome. So those are likely to cause someone to have an IQ below 70 when they're tested, but it's not a one-to-one. It's not the definitive ICD-10 code. So we'll be very interested to see what that gets us. So the next thing on your agenda is follow-up services and opportunities. So once we have some information, some more details, some quantified display of what we're dealing with. And by the way, we left the door open to asking for updates as data gets old, and then we would want to see what the trend is by pulling that same data for another time period and seeing what happened. Did it, is the trend going up or whatever? So The next question then that it would beg is, what services do those people need? We know they're probably getting PAS because that's what everyone else is likely getting, most commonly getting. But what else do they need? Is PAS enough? Is PAS as it's currently defined in community health choices sufficient? Is it meeting their need? So we would then have follow-up questions about that to the MCOs and involve OLTL in that discussion as well. So that information also leads us to possible opportunities, things like, for example, changes to a service definition that would more appropriately work with that population, keeping in mind that the waivers that CHC incorporated and put together, the service packages and the approaches were not designed for this population. So it's not a great fit in some cases. So and then another opportunity we are positing for the future is to what extent those folks may be interested in employment services. And, you know, is there potential interest different than or possibly stronger than the folks in the balance of the CHC where it has been relatively weak? As you know, the bulk of the folks in CHC are not working age. So the other thing we'll learn about these folks is a little bit more about them. You know, they may be on average younger and during the working period. So those things remain to be seen, but I think there are some really interesting potential follow-ups to what we learned and what we could further ask about the needs and the services for this group. So I wanted to open it up.
One more point that we should also make the group aware of is one of the nice provisions within CHC is one that allows the MCOs to provide in lieu of services, which means that the MCO can, basically put together a person-centered plan, service plan that replaces certain existing service approved services with others that they deem and the consumer agrees are acceptable replacements. So we have the opportunity within the ProVantaCare group, as many of the providers are well experienced in the services for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, to actually bring forth those alternatives that would help demonstrate their efficacy and support for consumers, but not having to wait for a full waiver, amendment, replacement, and CMS approval and all of that. So it could be done on a pilot basis and on a very individualized service basis, which is what we are hoping would be the next step.
Great, thank you for that. So we just have to wait and hope that we can glean something from what's given to us, and we won't be shy about asking for more to help us fill in gaps and where we need more information to go further. They seem to be cooperative and want to give us the information that we're asking for, at least for now.
And
And
one more comment for Ed, well, since Ed Butler is with us, and we appreciate him being part of this conversation, is that particularly for the employment services area, we hope that, we will engage you in that discourse as well, Ed, so that we have an internal advocate for helping these services also get propagated quicker.
Well, Fatty, we continue to promote those services across for all of those participants. And we recognize, and we have like kind of factored out the individuals that are 21 years of age to 64 with those services. So, I think that it is being offered cross disability. I think that OLTL is cognizant of the fact that people, even though generically I will say they classify it as physical disabilities, we are very much aware that a lot of those individuals have many other either dual disabilities or multiple disabilities.
Yeah. We appreciate that. And I apologize, folks. I have to get off the call. But Joan, if you need me to follow up on something, please let me know.
okay, thank you. Okay, so is there any questions or comments from the group regarding this request for information and what we potentially would do with it?
Joan, it's Ed. I understand what you're doing, and I understand that a large portion of your providers deal with the autism and the ID population. But since Pennsylvania is an employment first state, every agency in DHS and throughout the Commonwealth is promoting employment first as the first preferred outcome for people with disabilities. And so I understand why you're doing it, but I'm not quite sure like where you think OLTL, I don't know what we would be doing as the employment specialist, what we would be doing differently in promoting the employment and employment related services for that population versus any other disability population. Because in my mind, it's kind of created equally. And I will say, granted that our numbers have not looked really well in the arena of employment or outcomes or authorizations, given the fact that employment is just introduced in OLTL within, I guess now maybe it's starting to approach maybe the beginning of the fourth year, in comparison to the Office of Developmental Programs, where they're working specifically, more specifically with the ID and autism population. They've been in the employment game a whole lot longer, and they also have had a lot of funding that has been designated specifically towards the promotion of employment. And a lot of that undeniably is due to the fact that their advocacy base has been around for a very, very long time. And so that population has been employed with various things, even if it has been sheltered workshops, has been a lot longer employed, where as for the individuals basically served, generically speaking, in OLTL, those individuals in that population of the disability community had been so long working just to get services put into place so that they could get up every day and do something constructive in their lives, that the idea, and I guess probably the stereotype of the NFCE had contributed to the fact that nobody started prior to, 3.5 years ago, to talking about the fact that these individuals indeed, regardless of being NFCE and having cross disabilities, could indeed be competitively integratedly employed. So I guess from my perspective for ProVantaCare, I would just sort of be curious why, if you were looking at initiatives, that you wouldn't be looking cross disability. Because I would venture to guess that your provider groups, even though a large majority of them have been used to providing employment services to the ID population and the autism population, would be interested in the cross disability population, which would be inclusive of everyone.
Well, I think your observation is correct that ProVantaCare would value and promote services that are cross disability, and the range of providers that can make that happen. But I think when we kind of go down to a demographic level and look at various populations, we want to ensure that we're not overlooking opportunities that that could be put in place for a group that we don't know, because we don't yet have the data, how well they are being served or communicated with about their options. So as you've observed that in the ODP system, the folks who are served in that system do experience a different approach, that comes from that long history and the culture of offering employment services. But the folks that are in CHC, we don't know enough about them to know whether they ever were in the ODP system. Maybe they were, and maybe their conditions have changed, and now they are eligible for CHC, or this may be a new touch with the service system, and they have not yet been approached about those services. So we are interested in making sure that they are not overlooked either.
So I guess, Joan, what I would say is, from my observation or my vantage point as the employment specialist, that across the board in the HCBS world of OLTO, which would be all cross disabilities, including ID and autism, that it would all boil down to the service coordinator working with the individual participants and working with the participants' person-centered service plan team to approach not only the employment services, but the other services that they would actually need. So I would hope that the managed care organizations, and I feel very confident to say I would think that they would be addressing the overall approach to the needs of those individuals with that person-centered service plan, which is, participant driven to include members of their team, family members, caregivers. I could just tell you that based on our data, even though it's kind of flat, and what we have seen as part of the trends is the lack of engagement in regards to employment services based on the fear of losing benefits. And we have also seen that when we have pushed, when we have seen an interest and we have encouraged the CHC MCOs to encourage the SCs to foster from the guidance on conversations about employment to generate the interest, and then moving forward to employment as a goal on the person-centered service plan, we saw a trend where when it was on the person-centered service plan and it was laying there for a while as a goal with nothing moving, when the SC proceeded to approach participants about moving forward, even for the step of just benefits counseling, which was very non-threatening, many of those individuals had instructed the service coordinators to remove the employment goal from their plans. And in OLTL, we have offered them a whole array through our Ops 22 report, a whole array of alternate ways of exploring employment. Now, granted, OVR is kind of, I kind of use it as the first stop because they're the payer of first resort. And so if someone refuses OVR services, they're not eligible for those waiver authorized services. But that does not exclude them from the Employment First initiative, where they may choose to go the route of a career link, or if they choose to do job searching or job finding on their own. In promoting our employment service definitions, we certainly are very mindful with the job finding of making sure that in our service definition, it includes a partial definition for customized employment. It's not very detailed, but it's there. In our career assessment, it includes what I call a partial definition on discovery, maybe not as in detail as ODPs, but we attempted to align our service definitions to be very much similar. So we are, and I know that a lot of people in the world of ODP use a lot of customized and use a lot of discovery. So we are making sure that our service coordinators are aware that those exist. We also promote self-employment because we know that that's another area. They are aware that if an individual isn't capable of working 37 or 40 hours a week, that any level of competitive integrated employment, if that's what the participant wants, or it has other limiting conditions or factors, that's perfectly acceptable and considered an outcome. We do know based on our data that at least one of our CHC MCOs has some difficulty in confirming that the employment is competitive integrated employment. So on the ops report, we have a portion that shows participants that are employed, and then another portion that shows participants that are competitively integrated employed, and that they are able to verify that. We also know that in many instances, participants are hesitant about confirming the CIE with their service coordinators for a whole array of reasons. And that even carries over to the amount of money that they may be earning or the number of hours that they're working. So we do see a lot of those variables. We do know that the CHC MCO that's having difficulty confirming the CIE has put an initiative in place to kind of firm that up, because their numbers look better but their numbers would look a whole lot better if they could confirm the CIE. And I know that we also do monitor those individuals where it's annotated on their participant detail that they're engaged in some level of sheltered employment. We do know that some of those individuals are part of that number that Fatty had talked about, that were part of the brain injury population. And in looking at some of that, we found out that a lot of those individuals are really working in an environment that resembles competitive integrated employment, but because it's on the campus where they're receiving other rehab services, it's still considered sheltered employment rather than competitive integrated employment. And the other dilemma with that population is those individuals are capable of performing jobs that would be in competitive integrated employment. However, they may not be capable, based on their disability, of keeping up in the world of competitive integrated employment. So what I'm saying is they could do a job that would be in competitive integrated employment, but if it came to the number of hours or the production piece of it, it just doesn't seem feasible based on their disability, which they have no control over, that, it could be classified as CIE. I think the other thing that I just really wanted to mention to you was, I'm happy that when the Social Security Administration awarded the WIPA CWICs, that Pennsylvania was granted an additional WIPA CWIC. So we now have 4 agencies to meet the needs of the state. I'm also pleased that they are going to be doing their services virtually, and that you won't have a specific coordinator assigned to a specific county, but the organization will take it on a first come, first serve basis. So I think that that's good. I was really personally sad to see that Keystone Goodwill did not receive the award, because I thought in Pennsylvania that they did do a good job. And the other thing that I do think is positive is that with the MAWD expansion and the passage of Act 69, it's going to allow people with disabilities to earn more money. And I think the population that's going to be most impacted by that is going to be the OLTL population, with the so-called, I'm going to use the word loosely, physical disabilities, but also those individuals that are part of the autism disability community, because those individuals tend to attract a lot of the higher level jobs and a lot of the IT jobs. So I think that's good. That's going to be a major turning point for them. However, I believe that from the department's position, they're planning on a January 1, 22 rollout of the program expansion, and the department's in the process of making the necessary system changes, including the Office of Income Maintenance, training their staff more effectively on MAWD. But as long as Pennsylvania remains in a health emergency status, which it's anticipated that will be extended until December, it's going to impact MAUD, because you can't make any changes for participants in MAUD or their premiums. But I think that it looks promising down the road with the expansion of that MAWD.
All right, Ed. Well, you covered a lot of ground. So thank you for that information. And for my information, I would like to hear a little bit more about the WIPA CWICs. Can you tell us a little bit more about who they are and when that change will take place?
Sure, that change is already in place, Joan, and today on our listserv from OLTL, we sent out the directory that was provided to us.
Okay.
So the 4 WIPA CWICs are ahead: Disability Rights Pennsylvania, Full Circle Employment Solutions, which it's my understanding that some of the providers have had some interaction in the Philadelphia area with them because they extended their services into the New Jersey area, and they were doing some work in that area. And the last one was West Virginia University Research Corporation. So the directory shows the leads, excuse me, and the counties that those individuals will be covering. And I believe our announcement talks also about making a referral through the Ticket to Work helpline. And the only thing that I will say in caution is that, and I'll be honest, we've asked our service coordinators to make the referral for someone who's interested in benefits counseling directly to one of those leads. And our logic in OLTL behind that is the fact that because the Ticket to Work helpline has not received increases in funding, they kind of have an order of selection, and their order of selection says that in order to get referred to WIPA CWIC, you have to be an individual who presently has a job, an individual who has potentially job interviews or potential jobs, more than one, or transition age youth up to, and they go, I believe, to the age of 24, I think it is. So not that someone who called that wouldn't get the benefits counseling, but they may get a counselor on the phone who would give them 15 or 20 minutes of benefits counseling. And my apprehension with this is that it will not be as detailed as what a WIPA CWIC would be doing one-on-one with that individual. So instead of it being beneficial, could work the opposite way if someone doesn't get a clear enough picture that's all inclusive of their benefits. And I would like to applaud the existing WIPA CWICs in Pennsylvania, because I know that in working on the community of practice with transition, there are a lot of parents who were looking for benefits counseling and their children were non-SSA recipients based on household income. However, they were receiving other benefits and there really wasn't a place for them to go for benefits counseling. But in many instances, the existing WIPA CWICs in Pennsylvania have stepped outside the box and have assisted those families. And the only other place that I know that those individuals can get some help is through Achieva, because they have a person designated to doing live trusts. So as part of that, that group falls kind of under that category.
Okay, interesting. So, are there any questions or comments for Ed before we move on? Okay, so under other, what I wanted to cover today, you likely are aware of this, but in case it didn't come across your desk, whoops, I just lost my page here. There it is. We're in the process of celebrating across the country the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. There are some activities planned If you go, the Arc of Pennsylvania has information that they've been steadily putting out about that. Various activities and information that they're putting out. And it's really a very nice package of information and links to other information and so on. So if you haven't seen that, you can go to the Arc of Pennsylvania. They've put it up, and a number of other groups that work with employment services and people with disabilities also are promoting it on their social media and websites. Ed, do you have anything to tie into that you're aware of?
I do know, Joan, that PA Apsby is doing like a spin-off of, we had sent something out where they're matching up individuals with potential employers, and then they're going to be doing some other NDEAM events. I know many of the CHCMCOs have events planned and webinars planned for internal and external customers as well. And I guess, Joan, the other thing that I wanted to add is being cognizant of the fact that our data is looking like a little flatline from OLTL in the employment innovator. We have continually been working with the CHCMCOs, providing resources in constant contact. I see them doing a lot of very innovative things in many of their regions to promote the interest in employment. And most recently, we've asked them to do a personal assessment of their initiatives and their partnerships and their comprehensive employment plan to see if we can't boost the amount of interest in employment and services, as well as the CIE outcomes. So we've asked them to do that as well. And as you know, that OLTL has established goals for them on what we hope that they would accomplish. It's moving at a snail's pace, but I, am a believer in transparency. And so, what the data shows, it shows. And if it's truthful, it's truthful. And if it's transparent, it's transparent. But I would rather see it be presented that way and be truthful and know what areas we need to be working on or focusing on, rather than something that's inflated and then kind of the bottom kind of falls out of it. But in my opinion, the CHCMCOs, the employment staff that are assigned to it, are working very diligently. And so is OLTL, to provide them with resources and whatever they actually may need.
Great. So speaking of transparency, would there be an opportunity when that exercise is completed, the review of the employment plans, would that be something that the MCOs could share with, for example, the MLTSS MAC, and kind of, I guess it would be, lessons learned, or this is what we thought we could do and that didn't work, so now we're shifting to this.
Well, I guess my response, Joan, would be the Employment First Oversight Commission has specific stuff, and that report is in there.
Okay.
So a lot of what we are doing is reflected in there based on what their questions are. It's my understanding that's what's going to happen with the progression of this whole evaluation and so forth is being coordinated with Secretary Sneed's office and her special assistant. So at this point in time, I don't have an answer for you because it's too new with this newer approach to how it's going to be. So I don't know enough about it myself other than the request has been made. and really the request is really nothing new because almost on a daily basis, I'm in touch with the employment leads and we go through all of this and their partnerships and their initiatives and all of that stuff. It's just more comprehensively reported out with our data. And I do want to do a shout out, Joan, to Jevs and their hireability in Philadelphia. I know that they have partnered with one CHC MCO and they have received a grant from the Kessler Foundation. So they have been providing SSA benefits counseling in addition to other employment services as a comparable benefit. So when I look at our authorization of employment services, I also have to take into consideration the fact that some of our participants may be using another comparable benefit that an SC is aware of because by law, the CHC waiver is the payer of last resort. And it all
Right.
comes down to customer choice.
Right. Okay. Well, it's multifaceted and we will keep watching to learn and share and try to move the ball forward along with everybody else.
So I guess, Joan, as always, I'm open to anything that you have, that Fatty has, that members of ProVantaCare have. Any suggestions, anything that you think may work to help improve this. If you see something that doesn't look exactly right, please bring it forward and we can get you answers. If you have some innovative ideas or you've seen some other best practices, it doesn't hurt to have a lot of eyes on the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And finding something that seems to have made some progress someplace else, it's worth taking a look to see if it's applicable here.
Correct.
All right, well, thank you, Ed. So
Thank you.
I wanted to review with the group the next meetings, sticking to our pattern. We will convene on the 3rd of November and then again in December. And we'll, Fatty and company will go from there at determining what this group does going forward after that point. So the next meeting, we expect to have that data from OLTL and we'll review that and discuss next steps if it seems to be leading us somewhere or begging additional questions that we would then try to get answers for.
Joan, I just had one question, please.
Sure.
And so my question is, I understand your role and Fatty's role with ProVantaCare, and I kind of view it as an arm of RCPA. So my question,
yes.
my question is, when we have these very detailed discussions of things that are taking place, and when I apprise you of all of these things that are happening, is Richard Edley kind of briefed or made aware of those things, because he does sit on the EFOC? And as you know, I have a small listserv where I send out a lot of information stuff, and Steve Sorovic and Mary Hartley are on there, as is Richard and many of the RCPA staff. But I was just curious if Richard was apprised of these things, because I think it's very important to keep the channels of communication open. So from my perspective, it goes from OLTL to ProVantaCare or to RCPA, and then can go from RCPA to the Employment First Oversight Commission, even though we respond to them, on a regular basis. I don't think it ever hurts that information is shared with members who sit on other groups, so they can take that information and share it with those other groups as well.
Right, agreed. And we, with the RCPA ProVantaCare connection, there is, cross information sharing. And Richard does see all of the meeting minutes of both groups. So he does stay up to speed on those things.
Thanks, Joan.
Yep, thanks for asking. All right, so we have shot our hour, and I look forward to talking with you all in November. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.